A Venezuelan warship suddenly accelerates toward a lone United States Navy destroyer, cutting across its projected path in a move that instantly shifts from intimidation to direct confrontation. Officials later described the maneuver as a defensive response to an alleged intrusion, but the speed, angle, and timing of the approach suggest something far more deliberate. Within seconds, a routine patrol becomes a dangerous encounter at sea. The destroyer is operating alone, maintaining a steady course, when sensors register the rapid change in bearing. Distance begins to collapse faster than expected. What was once open water now feels compressed, tense, unforgiving. This is no longer a distant signal or a symbolic gesture. This is pressure applied up close. On the bridge of the destroyer, the mood changes immediately. The situation is flagged, categorized, and elevated. Crew members move with purpose, not panic. Every second matters now. The margin for error shrinks with every knot of speed added by the approaching ship. From the outside, the move looks aggressive, almost reckless. The Venezuelan warship continues forward, holding its line, forcing the destroyer into a narrow decision window. The intent appears clear: assert dominance through proximity and compel a response. But the sea has a way of punishing misjudgment. As the gap closes, the encounter takes on a different character. This is no longer about posturing. It is about momentum, about who blinks first, about whether control can be taken or lost without a single shot being fired. The destroyer does not change course abruptly. It does not broadcast warnings into open channels. Instead, it shifts into a heightened state of awareness. Systems quietly adjust. Data flows faster. Every movement of the approaching ship is measured, tracked, and logged in real time. What was meant to create pressure now creates risk. At this distance, even minor miscalculations carry enormous consequences. A delayed turn, a misread signal, a moment of overconfidence. Any one of them could turn steel hulls into headlines. Yet the Venezuelan warship continues its approach, committed now to a path that leaves little room for correction. The message it intended to send has already been delivered, but not in the way it expected. The sea remains calm, but the tension is unmistakable. This is the moment where encounters are defined, where intentions are exposed not by words, but by motion, where a single decision can reshape everything that follows. What began as a show of pressure has crossed into something far more dangerous. And as the distance closes to its narrowest point, one truth becomes unavoidable. This situation is no longer about who advanced first. It is about who is prepared for what happens next. Long before the Venezuelan warship believes it has gained any real advantage, the U.S. Navy destroyer is already watching. Far beyond visible range, advanced radar systems register the change in speed and heading. Sonar quietly confirms propulsion patterns through the water. Electronic surveillance begins mapping signals, frequencies, and intent in real time. Nothing about the approach goes unnoticed. To the outside world, the encounter appears sudden. To the destroyer, it is anything but. Every movement is logged, analyzed, and compared against known tactical behaviors. The data paints a clear picture. This is not a random maneuver. It is deliberate, accelerating, and closing. Inside the destroyer, the response is calm and precise. There is no rush to react, no dramatic shift in posture. The situation is classified within seconds and routed through a structured decision process. Officers assess angles, speed, and distance. Specialists monitor underwater acoustics. Analysts track electronic emissions for signs of escalation. This is not a ship being surprised. This is a ship confirming what it already knows. What looks like an aggressive advance from the outside is understood internally as a developing scenario with defined parameters. The destroyer's systems calculate projected paths and potential outcomes well ahead of the approaching vessel's current position. Time, distance, and momentum are no longer uncertainties. They are variables. As the Venezuelan warship continues forward, it unknowingly reveals more with every adjustment. Minor speed changes expose intent. Course corrections reduce ambiguity. The closer it comes, the clearer the picture becomes. Meanwhile, the destroyer maintains its course. This decision is intentional. By not reacting visibly, the destroyer preserves control over the engagement's tempo. Every second that passes adds clarity without increasing risk. Awareness becomes the primary advantage. Crew members remain focused, not tense. The bridge operates with discipline and routine. Systems hum steadily in the background. The destroyer is not preparing for confrontation. It is preparing for options. This distinction matters, because control at sea is not about who moves first. It is about who understands the situation earliest. And in this moment, the destroyer's understanding is complete. The approaching warship believes pressure is building. In reality, predictability is. Every possible outcome is being considered. Every escalation pathway is being measured. The destroyer does not need to guess what might happen next. It is already positioned to respond to it. The encounter has quietly shifted. What began as a sudden challenge has become a monitored event. The advantage no longer lies with speed or proximity, but with clarity and restraint. And as the distance continues to close, one fact becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. The destroyer is not reacting to the situation. It is controlling it. In an attempt to overwhelm the destroyer through proximity, the Venezuelan warship commits fully to a direct and aggressive course. The intent is clear: close the distance fast, limit the destroyer's room to maneuver, and force a reaction through pressure rather than patience. It is a move designed to project control. But control at sea is not taken by speed alone. By committing so aggressively, the warship begins to trade flexibility for appearance. The chosen approach angle reduces its own maneuvering space, locking the vessel into a narrow set of options. What was meant to restrict the destroyer's choices quietly begins to restrict its own. As the distance continues to shrink, subtle flaws start to emerge. Speed changes come slightly out of rhythm. Course adjustments are sharper than necessary. The margin for correction narrows with every second spent closing the gap. These are not dramatic errors, nothing that would draw attention from an untrained eye, but they matter. Inside the destroyer, they are immediately noticed. The attacking ship's commitment is now unmistakable. By pushing forward without preserving space, it has revealed its intent completely. Surprise, once its greatest advantage, has dissolved. What remains is momentum, powerful, but increasingly difficult to control. The closer the vessels move, the more risk shifts direction. Overcommitment begins to take its toll. With limited room to maneuver, any sudden change now carries amplified consequences. A delayed turn would increase collision risk. A sharper adjustment would expose vulnerable angles. Every option introduces new complications. Confidence, once fueled by aggression, starts to generate danger. The attack that was meant to force compliance now exposes poor judgment. Pressure without adaptability becomes predictable. And predictability, in a high-stakes naval encounter, is a liability. This is the critical moment where intent collides with reality. The Venezuelan warship is no longer shaping the encounter, it is locked into it. Momentum, once an advantage, has become a constraint. The destroyer, meanwhile, retains space, time, and clarity. It has not been forced into a corner. It has been given insight. The miscalculation is not loud. There is no sudden escalation, no visible mistake. And yet, the outcome begins to settle. By choosing proximity over positioning, the attacking ship has exposed its limits. By pressing too hard, too fast, it has surrendered unpredictability. The situation shifts from uncertain to readable, from dynamic to directional. This is where the balance changes. Not because of firepower, not because of threats, but because one side committed before it understood the full picture. From this point forward, the encounter is no longer about pressure being applied. It is about consequences being unavoidable. And the ship that believed it was forcing the situation now finds itself trapped inside a decision it can no longer undo. The U.S. Navy destroyer does not answer the aggression with warnings or weapons. There is no radio call demanding distance. No visible show of force meant to intimidate. Instead, the response comes in the form of movement, precise, deliberate, and carefully timed. The destroyer makes a subtle adjustment to speed, barely noticeable from the outside, yet enough to alter the geometry of the encounter. Its heading shifts by degrees, not miles, redefining angles that had seemed fixed moments earlier. These changes are not reactive. They are calculated. Defensive systems quietly move into higher readiness. Sensors widen their focus. Tracking becomes more refined. Systems that remain invisible to the naked eye begin to align, forming layers of awareness and protection around the ship. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is announced. This is control without spectacle. Each adjustment reshapes the engagement space. Distances that once favored the approaching warship begin to work against it. Angles tighten. Options narrow. The destroyer positions itself where it can see more, respond faster, and dictate outcomes without escalating the situation. The Venezuelan warship begins to feel the shift. What moments ago seemed like a position of pressure now feels restrictive. The aggressive approach has placed it into less favorable alignment. Any further advance would increase exposure. Any sudden correction would amplify risk. The space around it feels smaller, less forgiving. And still, no words are exchanged. The destroyer maintains its discipline, allowing the situation to evolve without interference. This silence is intentional. Every second that passes reinforces the imbalance. The opposing ship is now reacting to changes it did not initiate, responding to a framework it did not design. Unseen assets quietly take their places. Support exists beyond the horizon, aligned and ready, though never revealed. The destroyer does not stand alone, it simply appears to. This awareness changes everything. Without firing a shot, the destroyer has gained positional advantage. The encounter is no longer defined by who approached first or who closed distance fastest. It is defined by who controls space, timing, and options. And that control has shifted decisively. The most powerful part of the response is what does not happen. There is no escalation, no provocation, no force used to end the encounter. The destroyer does not need to assert dominance loudly. It demonstrates it quietly, through restraint and precision. The message is delivered without sound. You are being observed. Your movements are anticipated. And this situation is no longer yours to shape. As the sea remains calm, the balance of power becomes unmistakable. The destroyer has not resisted the encounter. It has absorbed it, redirected it, and placed itself firmly in control. From this moment forward, the outcome is no longer uncertain. Only the realization remains. It becomes clear to the Venezuelan commanders that the destroyer has not been intimidated. Not by proximity, not by speed, not by aggression. The ship has neither retreated nor reacted in the way pressure was meant to provoke. Instead, something far more unsettling has happened. Their own vessel is now responding to movements it did not initiate. Every subtle change made by the destroyer forces a decision. Every adjustment reshapes the space in ways that are difficult to anticipate. The encounter no longer feels symmetrical. The rhythm is gone. The sense of control that once came with momentum begins to slip away. Attempts to regain dominance only deepen the problem. A slight course correction exposes unfavorable angles. A change in speed tightens maneuvering limits. Each move intended to reassert authority introduces new risk. The more the commanders try to reclaim initiative, the more constrained their options become. Confidence begins to erode. What once felt decisive now feels uncertain. Decisions take longer. Calculations are revisited. The destroyer's silence amplifies the pressure, offering no cues, no reassurance, no reaction to read. The absence of escalation becomes its own form of dominance. Hesitation sets in. The reality becomes impossible to ignore. This approach has not tested the U.S. Navy's resolve. It has tested the attacker's judgment. And the results are not favorable. The destroyer remains composed, adaptable, and positioned with intent. The attacking ship, by contrast, is locked into a situation it no longer fully controls. The psychological shift is unmistakable. The encounter is no longer about asserting presence. It is about avoiding consequences. Every available option now carries weight. Pushing forward increases exposure. Pulling back risks, signaling retreat. Holding position prolongs uncertainty. There is no clean way out. The realization spreads quietly through the command space. The situation cannot be reset. It cannot be undone without cost. The moment for leverage has passed. What remains is damage control, not of steel or systems, but of outcome. This is the point where momentum turns against its owner. The destroyer has not needed to challenge the attack directly. It has allowed it to reveal its limits. By remaining disciplined and unreadable, it has forced the opposing ship into a reactive posture, one defined by caution rather than confidence. Control has shifted completely. The commanders now understand that whatever happens next will not be decided by who advanced first, but by who understood the encounter sooner. And in that understanding lies the final truth of the situation. The encounter is no longer theirs to shape. Only the ending remains, and it will not arrive on their terms. Eventually, the Venezuelan warship disengages. Not suddenly, and not dramatically. Its course shifts just enough to increase distance, its speed settles, and the tension that once defined the encounter begins to fade into open water. The objective it set out to achieve has not been met. There is no announcement, no acknowledgement exchanged between ships. The U.S. Navy destroyer does not pursue. It does not alter its mission or posture. It continues forward on its original course, steady and unchanged, as if the encounter never occurred. Systems return to routine monitoring. The crew resumes normal operations. To an outside observer, it might appear that nothing of consequence took place. But the absence of action is the conclusion. No shots are fired. No damage is exchanged. No headlines are written in smoke or flame. And yet, the message is unmistakable. The encounter ends not with force, but with understanding. The Venezuelan warship withdraws carrying something heavier than damage, a realization. The approach failed not because it lacked aggression, but because it lacked control. Speed and proximity proved insufficient against discipline and awareness. The sea slowly returns to calm. Distance replaces tension. Radar contacts spread apart. The moment passes, leaving only water and silence behind. But silence does not mean insignificance. What lingers is the lesson embedded in restraint. The destroyer never needed to assert dominance openly. It demonstrated it through composure, positioning, and patience. The encounter was decided not at its closest point, but long before, when awareness outweighed momentum. This is how warnings are delivered at sea. Not always through escalation, not always through confrontation, but through clarity. Some attacks fail because they misunderstand what power looks like. Power is not always loud. It does not always move first. And it does not always need to be seen to be felt. The Venezuelan warship departs with its hull intact, but its assumptions corrected. The destroyer continues its patrol, its mission uninterrupted, its presence unchanged. Nothing exploded, nothing burned, and that is precisely why the lesson endures. Some mistakes do not require explosions to be remembered. They are remembered in the quiet realization of what could have happened, and why it did not. Out on the open sea, the water settles. The ships move on, but the warning remains, unspoken and unmistakable, carried forward by discipline rather than destruction.